I'm Philo Brathwaite, and I'm a disc golf coach. I always like teaching. I love sharing information. It's been 20 years I've been playing disc golf out here at Oak Grove. Seen a lot of stuff. I've got to play and work with a lot of the best players in the game and kind of formulate a few concepts and, ideas that I think help, make the game a lot easier to get better at if you just pay attention to those things. You know what I'm saying? Don't get out of line. I try to keep it to one simple theme, or actually two today. There's a couple of swings I wanted to talk about since we're playing at Oak Grove and a lot of low ceilings. The problem I see a lot of players that are kind of struggling to figure things out have is this like down pressure kind of cut swing. So there's a couple of different ways you can throw a hyzer, and there's a couple of different ways you can throw a flat shot. If you guys are pretty savvy and familiar, been playing a while, you guys kind of figure this out. Hopefully the wheels should be turning like, yeah, there is. It's not always just one way to get things done. So I'm going to try to give you guys two different kind of swings that you can play with and work with. I've set up kind of like my drill that I do for my field work, and this is like, these two things go hand in hand. I try to eliminate random out of my game and replace it with predictability. So it's really good to do this with some kind of a setup that shows you how accurate you are with this drill. You don't want to just throw your disc out there and just go, yeah, that looked cool, but is that really what you're going to see on the golf course? Right? So if you guys are trying to get better, which I'm assuming you are, if you're out here listening to this information, you want to see your scores go lower, your player ratings go higher. This type of stuff is this is what made me the player that I am. I honestly will tell you the truth. This is what made me better. There's a couple of years I played out here, no instruction, no direction. I was just winging the disc, and it was really fun to watch it go far and fast, but you could ask dudes who've seen me out here from my early days. I had no control. There was no speed control on my shots, no angle control. It was just going really fast at the target, and if I missed, good luck making a putt, because I couldn't putt back then either. Right? So I had to change the whole way I thought about this game, and I thought more like how golfers think. You're trying to place the shot somewhere. Make yourself set up for the next shot, or set yourself up for the putt that you want, the angle that you want. If you don't have a lot of arm speed and you're still working on shaping your shots, use the slower discs. It'll actually teach you a lot more than trying to throw the faster stuff. We'll just pretend like that little triangle back there's one cone in the middle that represents the basket. And then those three cones are like the bullseye for me. So in my mind, I want to see my disc get as close to that bullseye as I can. I also have 4 other cones that are surrounding it that are a 7-meter circle. So that also shows me another range that I like to be within that 300 feet. That's for me. If you guys don't have, a 400-foot drive, shorten that distance up to maybe 250 feet or 200 feet, something that you can do consistently. That's the name of this game, is consistency, not randomness, okay? All right, so here's how I set this up. I brought these golf clubs to explain something that's also very, very important to this whole process. Your trajectory line always starts on the tee pad. If you guys have had a lesson with me or watched me do a clinic before, I preach this all day long, because this is super crucial to what's going to happen with your shot. If you don't start in the right place, it's going to be really hard to see your disc fly in the right place. All right, so what I've done here is there's a line that's representing the 12 o'clock line. I call this the pie of life. All right, there's usually 5 main angles in front of us, like a slice of pizza when you stand out here, right? Everything's got to be between 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock to get back to the 12 o'clock target. We don't really need to throw to 3 and 9, right? Those angles are irrelevant. Most of everything we're throwing is going to be right out here in front of us. So I'm going to always create that 12 o'clock line also to show myself the straight line to the target, the very narrow line. This first stake right here is kind of showing me that 1 o'clock-ish angle. I want to make sure that my disc goes around that first stake. That second stake is kind of the disc working its way back in. So I just kind of planning out the shape of my shot with these sticks here. Anybody can do this, man. Go to Big 5, buy some stakes. These are that Pro Pull, I don't know, company, if you guys have seen that with the cool little band resistance thing. Now they make these cool little training sticks. I think it helps a lot. Gives you the visual. All right, so here's what I'm looking for. I have this parallel that's kind of lining me up with this first stake. Just the first swing of disc golf is the hyzer, right? So here's the first swing. Instead of thinking of hyzer with your, shoulders over toes so much, let's try to stand up a little bit more vertical. All right, we're out here at Oak Grove. We don't really need to have our hyzer swing pitching up because that's going to throw us into the canopy, right? All right, so we need to flatten out our hyzer. That means our body needs to get more neutral. That's the first swing I want to talk about. All right, if we're trying to throw those low, flat hyzers, it's really hard to do that from this position. Most of the time your swing's going to start low and you're going to rotate your hips forward and up, and now your swing is going up the grade. All right, so a real easy way to fix that is to just think about neutral to the ground. You got to keep your hips and your shoulders level to the ground in front of you. That's a big, big part of this. All right, so when I'm doing my reach back on these flatter, lower, tighter ceilings, my reach back is more neutral to the ground and I can still shape hyzer from here. All right, the biggest thing is that I'm not letting this happen in my rotation. If you guys are having a hard time figuring out how to fix that, you got to slow it down. If you keep trying to go super fast, it's not going to happen. So here's what it looks like in slow motion. Here's my parallel. I'm doing my reach back to the parallel. I'm doing this like kind of shifting my weight, but you notice I'm keeping my shoulders or my hips in between my legs here. My shoulders aren't teeter-tottering, right? That's the biggest thing we want to try to eliminate is this. I'm loading my energy. Now you're like not even close to hyzer. Now you're in anhyzer position, right? So it's really important to focus on this action here. And all of us can do this. All of us can do this. This is what keeps the disc flat right here, is this rotation action right here as we're getting that forward momentum through our knees. That's super important. It's like being a baseball pitcher and you're rotating that energy through the legs and then you're turning. Or a football player, you're turning that energy, sliding the energy, then turning. That's the momentum, that's the speed. How fast you do that is how fast the disc should be flying. If you do it slow, you get nothing. You do it fast, you should have more. All right, so here's my parallel. Reach back to the parallel. I'm turning, dragging the disc down the line, turn, 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 boom. Flatter version of hyzer. All right, here we go. Still inside the circle. That's the goal, is to work on shaping the same shot with every disc in your bag for the most part. Obviously, the more overstable, you start pushing the line a little bit wider. You can just set your line up a little bit on your tee pad. You can use a few discs, a couple of putters, anything, but it's really good to give yourself the trajectory line a little bit more stable. Push it out there a little wider and you're trying to drag the disc back to the 12 o'clock. Like for me, I'm stoked with that when I'm playing tournament play because I'm 5 steps from the basket. I make that putt 95% of the time, stress-free. So this is a really cool drill to work on, guys. You can take your mid-range and go inside the 1 o'clock line, finish to the 12. It's a cool way to kind of mix it up. Gives yourself the visual, you've plotted out the flight path. That's swing number 1, flat hyzers, a little bit more neutral in the body position instead of bending forward and having that sharp angle on the disc and a whole bunch of turn. There's no glide in that swing, unless if the disc is what? Anybody? Understable, correct. All right, so the next swing that I want to talk about is the flat cut swing, the one that really looks really sharp and tight. And it's coming from more of a flat swing than a hyzer swing, but it's still being thrown on the hyzer side of the plane. If you try to do this to the left, more than likely the disc is never going to come back to the 12. It's really tough to do this shot to the left. It's the hardest shot in disc golf, to go 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock. It's not that easy. You got to do that on the right side. And it makes it a whole lot easier to predict the finish towards the 12, back to your target. All right, so the way that this works in my setup, I'm going to use this same 1 o'clock angle for the most part. Unless if the disc gets a little bit more overstable and meat hooky. All right, same thing with the body position. I'm more in an upright, vertical position. I'm not going to start doing this with my body and getting into the Anheuser position, because it's unnecessary in my opinion. Unless if you throw really, really slow and you actually have to really use all that body weight, but then you're still putting a lot of angles on the disc. The point of this release angle is to be like this to the ground. Barely nose down, barely against the grade from perfectly flat to the ground. The smaller the angle, the better. If you make a big angle, you get a big turn most of the time. To stand a little bit taller, this is super important, guys, is to stand up when you're on the tee pad. If you're like putting your body, contorting it in different angles and stuff, you're kind of giving your body and your swing two different ideas in a way. You're kind of setting yourself up. Your body is the machine. The disc is reacting to what the body does. That's the easy way to explain this. If you start setting your body up like this, how are you going to throw a flat shot? You know, like stand up tall. Get that disc somewhere between your shoulders and your hips, somewhere up in here, so that you can keep that swing level. All right? The pitch of this swing, super, super important. It's kind of like this. Slightly down, high to low. All right, we don't want to get this upward swing in this at all. That's stall on the disc. That's the disc going upwards first. We want the disc kind of pushing downwards with a little bit of overstable edge to it. And all of us can do this. It's all about how you shape your body, guys. Arm up. Now I'm rotating and I'm putting down pressure on my swing. Actually coming down the grade, snapping my wrist over the grade of the disc. You can see that, but what do you notice about my wrist? It's not hinged open. All right, every angle, every snapping angle that I do, my wrist is going back to flat. Back to flat. So if I'm throwing a standard hyzer, back to flat. If I'm throwing the flatter hyzer, back to flat. This flat shot, back to flat. But it's the trajectory and the pitch of my swing that's making this possible. Here we go. Try not to kill these kids. And the same concept applies here. The same concept applies as far as the trajectory line, but it's going to not have that hyzer shape in the beginning. The disc is going to eventually hyzer, yes, but the shape of the shot is not a hyzer. Okay? That's the right idea. If I'm trying to throw up the grade, I'm intentionally setting my hips up the hill. Intentionally setting my hips up the hill. So now I'm telling myself this is my swing plane. Every time I'm lining up my shots, this right here happens in my mind. What's the grade of the ground in front of me? What's level? If this is level, then I have to make my swing match this pitch. If this is level, then I have to make my swing match. If this is level, I have to shape my swing high to low. You guys remember Verdugo Hills and you had the two downhill holes? What happens if you swing flat? Bye-bye, right? I saw dudes do that all the time. I'm like, you guys, you're throwing down there. Why you throw it out there? You got to make your swing plane. Your swing has to match the ground that's in front of you, or whatever the concept for your shot is. Let's say you have this wide open hole and you want to throw the big spike hyzer. Well then, yes, you need to make your swing represent that. That's easy. Our bodies naturally, for some reason, want to do that. All right, but if you want to make it a little flatter, then you got to talk your body into the motion that you're trying to create. All right, you got to feel it out. Try to feel that core getting firm as you're coming through instead of loose. That's really where it happens. I'm telling you, this core is super huge. It's kind of a hard thing to really describe easily and to like really just make it general, but it's something you have to feel for yourself. All right, the idea for the two swings we're talking about here, forward and flat hyzers, more vertical, keeping the disc a little bit more down pressure with that swing. On both of these swings, there's an element of down pressure with your core, that compression here. If you guys are kind of like loose and swinging up, it's not going to happen. All right, that's kind of the opposite of the swing that we're talking about today. That swing is something I see most of us new players do all the time. They haven't really figured out the idea of compression. Happens in the core. All right, it's all hips and core. Majority of your swing, your arm is receiving the speed that you start with from your legs up. There we go. There we go.